Frequency and vibration is the substance of all things. We are all musicians in a cosmic orchestra. Our goal is to journey through the powerful, mysterious world of music to awaken, align, and elevate life force energy for the mind, body, and soul. This is a sacred space for you to tap in, tune up, vibe out, while we dive deep into the inner sanctum of creativity. We invite you to accept this invitation to explore, expand, experience, and elevate with these serious vibes. Welcome to Serious Vibes with Doctah B Sirius, where we're going to have great conversations around music, vibration, healing, wholeness, and how sound and frequency affects our minds, our bodies, our spirits. We're going to discuss how the whole universe is an orchestra. Vibration is everywhere. The only thing there is vibration, which is frequency. That's all there is. So in this particular episode, we have a wonderful guest. Before I even introduce him, I'd like to say that, I grew up as a percussionist, as a little child, banging on pots and pans in my mother's kitchen. And I went on to make many records as a studio musician. Then I became a producer, a composer, a writer, an arranger, an engineer, and a record executive for many, many years. And, I left the industry for specific reasons and chose to take the path of making music and making herbal products and holistic products that could help the world. And I heard about this gentleman, and I didn't know we had a similar life path until we began to talk. And our talks at first were about radiation, electromagnetic radiation. And even music itself actually is a type of radiation, because there's many different types of radiation, as we'll get into today. But I was talking to a friend and he said, you've got to meet this guy. You've got to meet this guy. So finally, I was introduced to the man by phone and we talked for weeks. And one day he says, I started out as a musician. And that leads us to where we are today. I would like to introduce this man who I believe, there's no accidents. Everything happens for a reason. Everything. And there's always a vortex. There's always an opportunity. See, opportunities knock every day. They don't go away. They just go to somebody else if you don't open up the door. and allow it. So today we're opening the door on the Serious Vibes podcast to take us into a new place. We're going to talk about music. We're going to talk about sound and having a sound mind and body. I would like to introduce Norbert Heuser, who has an interesting story. We're going to have a conversation. We're going to make it a little fun. And you'll begin to see how things actually come together in oneness. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you.
My pleasure, my privilege to be on your show.
So great. We were talking, and we were on a whole other subject. And you said to me, hey, I started out in the kitchen playing rhythms on my mother's pots and pans. And that opened up a whole new world of possibility. Can we talk about how you got into music and what your place in music has been and some of your experiences?
Sure. I'd be happy to. As a 3-year-old boy, and keep in mind that I'm a bit aged at this time, when I was 3 years old, there were no music stores around or music instruments for children. There was nothing really except recorders. There was nothing. So I was fascinated by the drums, and I took the pots and pans from my mother and some kitchen utensils and imitated to play a drum, right? And this was the start of my music career. Later, when I was 10, my father bought in a pawn shop a guitar for I had 2 brothers. There were 3 of us, and we shared this guitar. I was the youngest. The eldest was 8 years older than me. The second was 4 years older. So we had to share this guitar, right?
This was in New York, New Jersey? Where was this?
Germany.
New Germany? New Germany or New Jersey?
New Germany. So we shared the guitar. And you started to learn 2-3 chords. And with 3 chords, you could play a hell lot of songs,
Yes.
A hell lot of songs. And I was fascinated by the music, most influenced by Donovan, by the Beatles, which was a big inspiration for me. Later on, Ray Charles. So this is how I started music. And then with the age of 12, 13, I played in the band, but we had no drummer. Okay, so I volunteered to play the drums, right? And funny enough, we played at the American air bases in Germany, close where I lived. On a Saturday evening, we would entertain the American soldiers on their base in their nightclubs, okay? And we made $40. I made 40 Deutschmarks a night, okay? Which was a lot of money for us at this time. But I had to give 30 Deutschmarks to the guy who owned the drums. I didn't have a drum set.
Oh, wow.
So I gave him $30 of the $40 I made. But it was not important. It was about the fun, about the excitement, about performing and doing something nobody else did, right? Nobody else could do, right? Except for playing soccer or riding a bicycle, there was not much to be done. All these fancy things came later in our life. So this is how I got into music, and then with my brother and a friend of mine, we played Irish music. I performed Irish music, and I bought then, at a bit of later stage, a property on the west coast in Ireland, where I spent, as a second home, my time, and toured around Ireland and played there in the bars and wherever, And I learned to perform vocals without any microphones or speakers. Because at this time, there was nothing around, especially on the west coast in Ireland, very poor. So you just yelled, you just tried to get over the crowd which was boozing there, right? So I moved on, and eventually I ended up in, there's a big story, I cannot go there. I'm happy to share it some other days, but it's a very, very interesting story. Very interesting story, how I ended up in the music industry, music instrument industry. And I became a German distributor for musical brands, primarily percussion and drums. So I was the prince of percussion and drums in the German music industry. And every music store in Germany who wanted these certain brands, which I represented, had to buy through my company, which imported these instruments from other countries. And I was the exclusive distributor. And every music store in Germany who wanted these had to come through me. And I did this for many, many years.
Wow.
And at the same time, a bit later, I started to work together with the highest end manufacturer of audio sound systems in the world. I say without any reservation, the highest end quality sound manufacturer in the world, called KS Audio or KS Digital. Working with them together, representing them, working with them. And when I moved to the United States in 2000, I took the brand with me to the United States, and I represented them in the United States.
Wow.
That's the short version.
So what was the percussion company you said that you distributed?
The American company called Latin Percussion, LP.
Latin Percussion.
And the American drum company called DW.
Yes.
And American drumstick company called Vic Firth drumsticks.
Yes.
And a Turkish cymbal company called Istanbul.
Yes.
Okay. So these were the main companies I represented in the percussion drum business. All fine products.
And this is where our story got interesting because, you know, as a percussionist, as a conga drummer, you know, one of the first conga drums that I really desired was an LP, Latin Percussion.
Sure.
And I even at one point kind of represented them as like an endorsement, you know, and I, you know, loved the Latin Percussion brand and their instruments. So when you said that, you know, you started off with pots and pans and then you went on to you're distributing these instruments, and I'm saying, wow, this is a really deep connection that we have, you know, because we're both from that same root. And how, you know, I went on to the music industry, and then, you know, you went into the technical industry also. And I used to sell audio equipment back in Los Angeles. My first job in Los Angeles when I moved there was working for a company that had high-end audio. So we sold a lot of high-end brands. And I remember distinctly, they brought in these high-end speakers one time. And this was a whole system, I think. And they said, we're thinking about carrying these. And we had things like Macintosh and Bang & Olufsen and Klipsch, you know, all of those things. And I remember, I said, you know, I remember this name, KS Audio. And I said, this is the same company? Very high definition speakers. I remember their thing was, they were very true, very accurate. Mm. And, you know, a lot of times we're working together in one world, and as we begin to come, you know, to come together and speak and converse, we find out that there's a lot of similarities in all of our lives, even though we come from different parts of the world.
Sure.
So we started talking about electromagnetic radiation. That's how we got into this. I'm interested to hear how you went from music. No, there's another piece we'd like to go to. You mentioned that you invented an instrument.
Yes.
This is really mind-blowing. You asked me, had I ever heard of the egg? I'm like, the percussion egg? And you said, yes. I said, yes, I've heard of the egg. I had eggs sitting right next to me. It's a percussion instrument. And I said, yes, I always have an egg with me. You know, every percussionist.
You don't leave home without it.
Don't leave home without an egg, because I would go places and I couldn't bring my drums, but I'd have an egg in my pocket. And when you mentioned that you had something to do with the egg, it just opened up a whole vortex. Can you talk about the egg?
Well, what happened was, I told you about 3 years old, building a drum set from the pots and pans, right? Mm-hmm. When I was in the established music business, I made enough money to have a hobby. And my hobby was to create a line of musical instruments for children, really playable, which I called Planet Music. And I made an entire catalog with instruments for children to grow up with music which really sound, which work. And I built at this time the first tunable drum set in the world for children, with real tunable heads and really playable and wooden shells. That was my vision, because I wish to have that when I was 3 years old. And I said, no, I want other 3 years old ones to have that, yes, but it's really playable. Because most of the stuff you bought out there was cheap plastic crap.
Yes.
Didn't really sound, broke, and, you know, had some fancy Disney motifs on them to sell it like cake, you know, but it was nothing. It was actually an invalidation for children, to my definition, you know. Yes. When you give children who reach out for music instruments, and you give them something which doesn't sound, you cheat them. Because they cannot create real music.
Yes.
It's just a fake illusion which falls apart, physically falls apart, right?
Yes.
And we are all, this is my belief, we are all born as artists, okay? Just we are distracted and we're misled of following this path. You take children, they all reach out for drums and percussion. They all, everyone, okay?
Yes.
Unless the parents say, you are too loud, stop that. Don't do that. Go to your room, play on the computer. It's quiet, you know.
Yes.
So I built this line of musical instruments for children, and I exhibited it for, I don't know, 15 years at toy shows, at trade shows, as educational shows, to offer it to the world, you know. And I remember my accounting manager says, "Don't do this, Norbert, you'll lose too much money." And I said, "Well, I have to do this, you know. It takes some while till people wake up, you know, but I have to do it." And funny enough then, some years later, when I walked through toy stores or catalogs, I saw everywhere a copy of my products. And people jumped on this bandwagon. People copied me. People saw that there's a market for it. And the initial reaction is when you get copied, you're a bit pissed off, okay? And then comes, when you relax, a second thought, which confirms that what you're doing is right.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, it was not about me only selling these things. It was about that the kids get the right tools in their lives.
Yes.
Okay. So I designed these products, but coming back to the egg, and then one day I went to the drawing board and I designed these eggs, which I call chicken shakes. Okay, I call them chicken shakes. And the funny part was that originally I had 4 different colors. And every egg had a different sound. The darker the color, the darker the color, the lower the sound. So you could create different sounds, right? And I wanted to get a patent for it. I went to a lawyer and he said, you can't get a patent on the egg, right? 2-3 years later, after other people copied me by the thousands, a lawyer said, "Oh, well, I could have gotten you a patent for that, right?" Okay, fine. Water under the bridge. But it's by quantity the most sold instrument in the world, by quantity. Single instrument in the world.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Okay, so, but then I worked in the music industry for, I don't know, 30 years. I forgot counting. But 40 years ago, looking from today, 40 years ago, I stepped into alternative medicine. And it was a big passion of mine. And 40 years ago, more than 40 years ago, I was introduced to kinesiology, muscle testing, which at this time hardly people knew about it.
Yes.
Nowadays it's very popular and that's good, it's popular. But at this time, especially in Germany, because kinesiology came out from the United States,
Yes.
From a gentleman called Goodhart who developed it. He didn't invent it, but he developed it. And because it was always there since mankind.
Yes.
Okay? So, and I was introduced to kinesiology, and I practiced kinesiology and showed people which food for them would be not very good and which would be the better food, right? And I did this with a deep passion, and I went to an internship with a doctor. At this time, I was on the verge to die. I was practically dying. And I found this doctor by accident who was specialized in food allergies. And I had a combination of a high toxic volume in my body. I had an old farmhouse from the 17th century, and we stupidly treated the wood with some toxic chemicals to preserve the wood. And I inhaled all this crap.
Wow.
So I had a high level of toxic poisons in my body, and I had a high level of food allergies of 2-3 foods. And I by accident found this doctor, and he discovered this, and we worked on this, and I did an internship with him for 1 year. I would go every day to see him, except Sunday and Christmas, Monday through Saturday, every day for 1 year. And I took it as an internship, and he was happy to have me as a guinea pig, because I would go with him through everything to prove the point. We were so
Wow.
excited, okay? All right, so, and I had this strong feeling for alternative medicine because I saw more and more how much BS there was in the medical world. It was unbelievable, already at this time, okay? Already at this time. And step by step, I moved on, and I felt that there was something missing in my life. And I felt that trying to help people to become really healthy, learning by myself, of course, for myself first, right? That this was a high level of responsibility for me. I love music. I still love music. It's still my biggest passion. I support good music, which is the question, what is good music nowadays? And I'm still related to KS Audio from the distance as a freelance person. And I sold my music instrument company in Germany to somebody else to take over. And I sold my production of music instruments for children, which was based in China, to my Chinese partner, who unfortunately forgot to pay me for my share.
Forgot. That's a good way to put it.
He forgot to pay me. And I didn't want to go there by court and by law. I was married formally to a Chinese lady. I had an office in Taiwan, a company in mainland China, and a company office in Hong Kong. So I spent a lot of my life in Asia, in the Chinese culture, where I was introduced to Chinese medicine and trying to understand more about everything. So I saw that this is something which is my calling. I have to do this. I cannot just walk by and ignore it. I have to do this, and I developed then different technologies, different products to help mankind. And this calling was so important to me that I not dropped everything, but I let go. It's different. I let go, okay? I let go. It's like I had the 1967 Eldorado convertible. And I had a 1932 Chevy hot rod candy apple red.
Oh, wow.
Okay? And then when you play with these toys, there's a time where you had them.
Yes.
I had them and I enjoyed them, but there was a time where I didn't need them anymore. When I had my grandkids, a family wagon, family car was for me more important to have my two grandkids and the toys and going to the beach with them or driving somewhere else. So did I need the 67 Eldorado anymore? No, I had it, I enjoyed it, but it was time to let go. So it's a normal situation in life. I call it game over. Okay. When you play what do you call it? A pinball machine, right?
Yes.
And you push it too much.
Yes.
It tilts, it stops, and says game over, right?
Yes. Yes.
So I felt, look, I played it, and it was nice, but I developed, I went on, and what I'm doing now, what interests me, has a higher importance to me because I can give more back to the society, to mankind. So I have to take that responsibility. I have to follow that call. So I dropped it, I left it, I passed it on, and I stepped into full-time alternative medicine.
Wow. That's you know, the paths in life are interesting because, first of all, these are super eggs. Somebody took these and glued them all together and had a product.
I did this at the early stage.
So when you talked about the eggs, I'm like, wow, that was one of my, main things I could just carry.
Yeah, I did this, what I did there at the early stage when I was experimenting with different sounds and different things. Yeah.
Yes. I use these on lots of recordings. And, as a record producer, I was what they call pretty successful. Gold and platinum records and the whole thing. And I realized that one day I wasn't happy. I had the cars, the house, and all of those things, and I still wasn't feeling that joy. I felt like I was working, and I started looking at the industry different, and I realized that I was like a pawn, and everybody was making a lot of money but me. The little bit of money I was getting, which I thought was a lot, was a very little compared to all the other people who were getting paid in that industry. Not in the industry, but the people from the record company, the distributors, the publishers. And I realized that this was not something that I loved anymore. I loved music. I didn't love the industry. And I always tell folks, I said, they say, well, what happened? I said, well, I made myself sick. I became ill. And, I was given a short time. And that was the marker to let me know to walk away. So I said, game over. And I walked away from the music industry. A lot of deals, big deals sitting on the table, lots of money. But when you can walk away, when you can choose your time to shift into a different space, when you're ready to shift your dimension and you do it as the captain of the ship, as the CEO, it's beautiful.
It's called freedom.
It's called freedom or freeness. And when I walked away, I figured that I had to go try to figure out how to heal myself because the doctor said there was no cure. And I'm like, what do you mean there's no cure? You've got all these degrees, you should be able to cure something. But I realized at some point that that's not what they do. They want to keep you coming. So I journeyed into the world of natural medicine. I studied plants. I went to every lecture, every webinar. Well, it wasn't webinars then. They were just, lectures. And I read all the books. And I began to realize that the plants made sound. They had a flavor, which is like a sound, because your tongue is like an ear. It hears the flavors in the plant. And I had found all these different plants and studied with all these different masters, for myself, to help myself heal. And within a year after doing that, my whole life changed. And now I was immersed deeply into natural medicine, and that became my new life. And I only did it for myself at first, and then for some family members. This is what it was about. And it wasn't until I met some people that said, you got to bring this to the public. You got to help the world. You've changed your whole life. And I remember saying this prayer when I was sick. And I asked God, I said, God, I was looking up in the sky because I thought it was a guy up there somewhere, because I saw it in a movie, right? In movies. And I said, if you can help me heal from this, my whole life will be yours. I would like to teach people how to heal themselves. Not heal people, but help people heal themselves. Not become a healer, but open the doorway for folks to begin to fix their own issues.
Well, to my opinion, you cannot heal people. You can be the tool.
Yes.
You can give them tools.
Yes.
But they have to do it themselves from within.
Exactly.
Okay. But we can be tools, and this is how I think we take our work. We offer the tools.
And that for me became like the musician. I'm still helping people find joy and pleasure and, reach into a place that they may not have been before. 'Cause that's what music and art is like. You take people to a different dimension. You take people to a place out of where they're from, out of their mind, into this joy. Music is the muse. You're musing. You're helping to guide people. So I was still in the same thing. It was just called holistic health, but it still was music. And I never stopped playing music. For myself, I was more joyful than ever because I was playing my drums again. When I was at the last part of the music industry, I wasn't playing any instruments. It was pushing buttons and giving orders and having people sign contracts that said that they would be owned in perpetuity forever and ever and ever, their name, their likeness. But, folks, they desired to do that. But after a while, I said, I don't want to be part of this because, these are contracts. And the contracts that we sign in life are really deep. We sign many contracts. We sign contracts in relationships, with food. We sign contracts that sometimes we're not aware at the time, or we're in survival mode. A lot of times people are opting into something when they're in survival mode. And when you're in survival mode, it's almost like greed hits. You see, because you want to make it, you want to live. So you're grabbing at everything you can. And I realized at some point I had to flip the greed of survival into aspiration. You see, and to create, to have people be in that spiral, because aspiration has to do with a spiral, and help people get out of the circle, the cycle, the loop that they're in, you see, was amazing. And, as I listen to music, not all music, but a lot of the commercial today is a loop. It's the same thing over and over with somebody singing over it. And A lot of, just taking pieces of things and putting them together. And that is art. Taking, you could be an artist that goes and gets iron and different pieces of cars
the
and
different forms of
welds
arts.
them together.
The different forms of arts.
I'm not going to say that the music today isn't important. I'm saying that the music today has been curated to keep people in a perpetual loop, controlling the mind, so that people now look at something and say, oh my God, that's incredible. The person is a genius. When actually they just push in some buttons, and that's okay. Well, but there are musicians
there's a danger in that. There's a danger in that. You see, I left the music business, the recording side, the consuming side, the record side, buying records, consuming records, when things became very primitive, to my definition. Okay, so you have this 25-year-old audio engineer in his home studio. Mm-hmm. He may even not play a music instrument. May not. Maybe he plays guitar or keyboard. But for sure no drums and no violins. And this, what I call kid, in his studio, designs a record in which he pulls some computer program with drums. And he programs the drums where every drummer says, come on, I'm not playing drums like that. That's a computer program with no heart, with no soul. The person who programs this doesn't play drums, who puts this in a song in this way, or violins, classical instruments, right? Well, you have to understand classical instruments to use them wisely in a music piece. This is why, among others, the Beatles with their producers had so great success at this time where things were, they didn't have all the gimmicks from today, right? But they took classical music instruments and players, orchestras in their studio, 20, 30, 40 people, to perform live music. And they don't do this anymore today. The budgets have shrunk, and there's no platform for musicians to make money. There's no career in front of you. Well, I can play in clubs, I can play in bars, I can record music, I can come up with my own records. That's over, that's history, that's gone. Because everything is an artificial situation and even they cannot make any money with the 20 cents per download from the internet. How can you finance a year of production with 10, 20, 30 musicians and then come out with a record and then you get 10, 20 cents per sold item, right? So for me, it was the heart, the soul was gone. Music had to me a strong relationship with your soul, with your feelings, with your heart, right? And that was gone. So I basically stopped buying CDs, records, very selective, right? I once met this guy, saw this guy in New York in the street. You could see the man has no penny to his name, right? And he had this guitar, which I wouldn't have played because it was such a lousy guitar with rusted strings, right? And the man touched the guitar and he sang. And everybody stopped and listened to him. Because he had something you cannot buy for money and you cannot buy with the most expensive equipment, digital, in a studio.
Yes.
He had soul. He had a message. He had a personality. And that came across. And this is what I'm missing to the most part today.
And that's interesting because, my grandmother left a book of recipes or foods that she, liked or that she cooked. And I remember my sister and I used to take some of these, recipes and, attempt to reproduce them because we have the book. No matter what you did, it would never taste like grandma or your mother or whoever, because the secret sauce was the person. That was their energy in it. So this is why you don't have two musicians who play the same. They all can play the same song. Nobody can play the song like Miles Davis. You could try to do it in the top 40 band or whatever. Nobody could play the guitar like Hendrix. They say, well, he was the best this and this one is the best that. But there's no best. Everybody is different. And what we're looking at is being, moving from the place of being in a matrix where everything has to sound a certain way. Because now when they say, well, you're going to put out a record. Well, what's it going to be? Hip hop, Is it going to be rock? Is it going to be rock and roll? Is it going to be soul? It's like these categories that it had to be in instead of this fusion of love and harmony and wholeness. See, to me, that's soul. Soul is when your energy is in it. Your life force is in it. I watched them, the industry go from recording analog because it's magnetic tape, right? It actually picked up the energy in the room, the spirit in the room, the vibration of the musicians actually was recorded on that tape because of magnetism. And then we were playing that on a vinyl record. And that vinyl record was basically carbon. And that music was in those grooves of the record, right? And the diamond or the sapphire needle picked that up and converted it into vibrations that you could hear. So even the modem, the modes, I should say, even the process of making a song was basically a spiritual thing. It was all energy. We had to make sure we had the right engineer. Not every engineer, just because you can push buttons, could be in one of my recording sessions. Each musician is handpicked. Each person you bring in is handpicked. To me, that's what record production was. That's how I learned, by actually handpicking everything. You're like you're the captain of the ship. So you decide who's going to be on the boat. And certain singers, their voice needs more stringed instruments. Certain singers, you're going to use more synthesizers.
Or even different microphones.
Different microphones. I have a whole array of microphones. You know what I'm saying? And you just don't put a microphone and tell the singer to sing. So, we were into the art, and I still am to this day, into the art of recording the best vibration in the moment. And see, these moments, sometimes they never happen again. I noticed a lot of times when you put the artist in the studio and tell them, let's just do a dry run. Usually that dry run is always the best one because it has more feeling. The notes might be off, but a lot of records you were flat or sharp, but the feeling was there. The emotion was here. The emotion is the art. It's not supposed to be perfect. It's not supposed to be quantized so that every beat is the same. Every chorus is exactly the same. Now, this is what is being promoted today, because people are being corralled like sheep to agree that something is great and phenomenal that actually is not that phenomenal.
And what comes on top of this nowadays, you have recorded a WAV file with 60 gigabytes, and then you convert it in MP3 with 5 gigabytes.
Yes.
And I ask you, where did the 55 gigabytes go?
Yes.
They're not in the music anymore.
Yes.
They went out through the back door. So recording it in 60 megabytes and then producing it MP3 with 5 megabytes. And the downfall is that, of course, we raised, it's already done, a generation or two of kids growing up with headsets, with MP3 files, like eating McDonald's. They cannot even appreciate a nice handmade whole food meal anymore, because they're used to the downgraded McDonald's. And I call it McDonald's for the ears, okay?
I like that one.
McDonald's for the ears. And once you are used to a downgraded level, you never go up again.
Yes.
Okay? You're not saying after 20, 30 years of McDonald's, oh, I should eat now good food. Stop that, right? And after listening to 20, 30 years of MP3s, you're not saying, hey, there's music missing. I need the WAV file.
Yes. And that's what I say about agreements. People have agreed to certain things. But what I'm beginning to notice now is that if you go into the underground music, there are people recording the old way, still doing it because they love it. Even with vinyl, vinyl is coming back, actually recording on vinyl and doing that whole process. So the mainstream is being corralled to go over here like the rest of the sheep. But then you have the black sheep who's always jumping over the fence. You see, so there is still great music being made, but you have to look for it. But what's being put in front of you is fast food. Sure. What's being in front of you is manufactured. You see what I'm saying? And it might feel good for a party, but when you hear an actual analog record, when you hear an orchestra, when you hear a violin and the resin and the way the string is moving, because those instruments are on your body, stringed instruments and certain drums, the drums vibrate with a certain frequency that can't really be reduced to an MP3. Like me, I have trouble listening to MP3s When I hear the radio, it plays with my nervous system. I can tell it's an MP3.
Of course.
So even the music I do now, I take analog sounds and I might turn them into digital, but I use full bandwidth. I use full bandwidth so that we can still get the feeling, and the dynamic range is what's important. You see, I did a gig one time with this drummer, and he played with a lot of big drummers. I think it was, he was Beyonce or somebody's drummer. And we were in this little club. It was a jazz band. And, you know, the drum set was there before the rest of the band. There's a little bandstand. The whole bandstand is his drum set. He had like 6 tom-toms, cymbals hanging from, you know, scaffoldings. And it was this huge set. He comes finally. And we're like, you know, there's no room on the stage for anybody else. So we've got to actually be off the stage a little bit, kind of in the audience, which is okay. And I remember we start playing. And he was loud. It's like he was at a rock concert. He was loud. Through the whole night, I'm stroking my hands, you know, because I don't play hard anymore. You know what I'm saying? You play with dynamics, and this is a very sensitive thing. He was loud, and he got louder. And then it was time for him to solo. And he soloed. And nobody took notice. Do you know why? He was loud all night. He was soloing all night. So he and I had this conversation. I said, you know, he said, yeah, you know, I did a lot of great stuff on my solo. Nobody clapped. I said, because you didn't have any dynamics. He said, well, what do you mean? I said, you're so used to being on the big stage. When you get to the small stage, you don't know how to have respect and honor for the other people with you. You were all alone. So when you soloed, you'd already been soloing. So if you play soft in certain sections of the song, and right here, the chorus, you're going to push it maybe a little louder. And towards the end of the song, there's a vamp, and it comes to a crescendo, which is like an orgasm. And he was like, wow, I never heard this before. Because he was always used to being on the stage with the big, you know.
I assume the audience was tired of it. They were
see,
tired
what happens is, you know, when we hear something over and over and it's being thrown at you and it's being yelled, you don't have any dynamics. You don't have any sensitivity. So today, what we're noticing, there's one group going this way, but a lot of people, even young people, are still looking for the real deal. Well, a lot of musicians today are buying instruments again. You go to, you know, say the Guitar Center. There's a lot of young people buying instruments, cellos and trumpets and things, because even though you're going this way and it looks like it's bad, everything is tied to its opposite. So while that's happening, moving that way, something else is happening right now. So I think we have a chance at this particular time to reintroduce, you know, people to music, to sound, to lyrics, to melodies that actually cause change in people. They cause people to shift. You know what I'm saying? Have a change that transduces or transmutes you to another level, cause you to go through a transformation emotionally, because music is supposed to be felt, not just heard, but felt. It's a full body thing. So this particular show that we're doing now is, you know, we're, you know, having people like you come on who can talk about the differences and what we could do to change things, because it's not about just talking about the problems. It's also looking at the solution. And the solution sometimes is find the soul, find your soul, find something that you really do, you know, that you could really do that's yours and not just copy and model. Because if you're just modeling all day, there's no difference. You sound just like everybody else. You look like everybody else. Imagine somebody that just copies Picasso's paintings. Why would you do that? You see, the best musicians, the best artists of all time are very unique. And when you are unique, you are bringing something totally different to the game.
Well, the uniqueness in many cases means that they may be not successful or not successful immediately. There has been always examples in the history of music where people did something completely new, or painting did something completely new, which was first rejected.
Yes.
Or even in the physical world.
Yes.
Like we talk about nowadays, I'm working with quantum physics. I'm working with situations to improve the body situation, right? And my countryman Max Planck, who discovered quantum physics, it took, I believe, 16 years before they honored him with a Nobel Prize. Okay? Wow. If you take the painter Vincent van Gogh, one biography says in all his life he never sold one painting. And one biography says his brother bought one painting. Okay?
Wow.
So there are examples in history, in music, in art in general, where people were first not successful at all.
Yes.
Because there's a famous composer in France called Hector Berlioz. He's considered today a classical composer. But when he came out, his classical music was so off that the people rejected him. His classical audience rejected him because it was too wild.
Wow.
Too not methodically to what they were listening used to. And it took ages before he was accepted as a classical composer. So there were times where people tried new things which were not accepted. But then again, to be unique, if you're a creator, let's say creator, whether artist or business, to be unique, you have to take chances and you have to do your thing.
Yes.
And not look at the money point.
Yes.
And I keep saying, somebody who is a creator should never look for the money.
Yes.
And he should be not involved with money. Because once you're involved with money, you stop being creative. You're selling your soul. Let's say you exhibit your paintings on a market stand on a Saturday afternoon, in the city, right? And you have your Vincent van Gogh painting standing there, right? And next to you, somebody who does very cheap, lousy, kind of flimsy stuff, right? And he sells like hot cake because it touches the nerves of the average person in the streets for $25, right? So this person who doesn't sell a damn thing may get motivated to compromise his art to make money to sell. This is why a creative person should never be involved with money. He should have a manager, somebody who runs the company, but he should keep what he's supposed to do, creating, without looking for commercial success.
And that's interesting because, when you are doing what you do and you stay focused on that, you do your best. And we see a lot of artists after they got really big, all of a sudden everything started sounding the same. The talent went down. So a lot of times we're hiring managers in record companies. But then I think something happened where a lot of managers and record companies took advantage of artists and didn't give them their just due, didn't take care of the business as well as they could because of greed. A lot of times the artists didn't know how much money they were making. But when we start looking at this word success, what is success? Because a person who has their own autonomy and is being themselves and is full of themselves, like right now, musically, I'm very successful. That means that I'm doing what I like to do the way I do it, and I'm not trying to sell it. I'm not trying to be commercial. You see, I'm doing it because this is my spirituality. I'm doing it because this is what makes my heart beat. So I feel successful. I am not happy because happy is a happening that's only for a short time. It's temporary. I'm joyful. I can own joy. So even as I'm with you here and I play this instrument called the medicine drum, that's because this tunes me up to life. And music as a soul, as a practice, as a discipline, it'll change you.
Well, I guess we have to separate, to my opinion, there is something which is called personal success.
Yes.
Which is not commercial. You have
Yes.
a personal success. You know you're good. You know it makes you happy.
Yes.
You know that's what you're looking for.
Yes.
You're successful in doing what is in your vision, right? And then there's a commercial success where doesn't mean that you did something great, but it sold, it made money. And I've seen artists. I worked with a lot of artists close. And I've seen good artists, famous artists, world-known artists, coming from stage. People were clapping, asking for encore. They came from off the stage, and I said, "What a shitty performance," because their standard.
Yes.
They know, Jesus, I was poor, I was bad.
Yes.
The people didn't recognize it. They asked for more, but he himself, to his standards, that was not good, right? So, but there's a commercial success, and if people yell and shout and buy records, it doesn't mean that it's quality. Otherwise, McDonald's would be quality by this commercial success, right?
Yes.
So we must separate, I guess, personal success and commercial success.
Yes. Which brings us to the next section. I've had a theory in the past that some of the technology of today is causing people to be dumbed down.
Of course.
And they're not thinking with their full self because they're not online. There's something interrupting them from going all the way and really feeling the greatness of the world. Their senses are changing. And, my theory was that people's brains, their neurons, their brain was shrinking and their body was being affected by the environment.
Sure.
Now, this is where, to me, it gets really deep. I was in the studio and we were working on this. I always worked on what they call Neve mixing boards. Neve was very analog. It had this very special warm sound. And one day we had to record on a SSL board. When I walked in the room, I was like, whoa, something's different. What's this? They said, well, this is an SSL. It's the new technology, blah, 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 blah. I said, I don't feel good, though. They said, oh, no, but you're going to feel good. This is the very commercial board that everyone's using. And I never felt good. And I said to somebody, I says, I feel like there's radiation in here because I'm very sensitive to energy. I said, I feel like I'm being cooked in a microwave oven. And then after that session, this guy comes and he says, do you know that there's a place called the SSL graveyard? I said, what do you mean? He said, these boards have such toxic radiation, nuclear radiation of a type, that you can't even put them in a dump. You can't get rid of them. So they have a place called a SSL graveyard. I said, what do you mean? They take them to this place and they just leave them in this huge building. And there's hundreds and thousands of them. Wow. Because of the energy. And I noticed that I wasn't very creative. When you're just so happy to get something done and get out of there, you go along with anything. The person's yelling on the mic. You say, okay, that's good. And it doesn't even sound good, but you can't stay in there because of that frequency. I'm not saying there's something wrong with the SSL board. I'm saying for me, a very sensitive person, I have to be around instruments and equipment that is tuned to me. Do you think that things like 5G now and 3G, 4G, satellite radiation, all the energies around us are affecting people's ability to really perceive something good, something wonderful? Are they being created and put in a matrix, right? Or creating dis-ease or discord because of the radiation on the planet?
Of course. My company nowadays, when I entered the health business, right? My first action was actually to create a product which protects you from the cell phone. Okay? We have two things going on. We have a physical attack to the human body and animals and plants and water. Okay? 4G, 5G, 3G is pretty much gone. 4G, 5G attacks the human body physically. There's no question. Plenty of proof. You find on my website plenty of proof. Okay? It attacks the human body. It harms the human body. Point blank. So when I started this, was the first product because I became very sick and my grandson became very sick because of the cell phone. And then I looked around and said, something must be existing that protects you from this. There was nothing. So I decided to do it myself. I had to, right? And some few years back, I came across a company in Austria called BISA Institute, because at the beginning I could only prove the effectiveness by what is called kinesiology or muscle testing, which some people accept and some not.
Yes.
And I came across, I did a show in Switzerland and a talk show, and this guy said, well, your products are fantastic. I said, yeah, but I have a problem. I can only prove it by kinesiology. Some people believe in that, trust, and some not. He said, no. There's a company in Austria called BISA. They're specialized to test these products. I said, are you kidding me? No. So I contacted them and they tested all my 25 products and they wrote 1,600 pages of certifications and of tests where you see the physical change by using a cell phone unprotected and by putting this on the cell phone and what the change of the human body does. Having this without protection, your functions, your organs start to become degenerative. Putting it on, all of a sudden, the degenerative effect on your body changes into health. And they prove that.
Wow.
And I have these proofs on my website. People can see it, right? People can see it. And in the early stage when I gave seminars, I provoked people. I said, 3 people come on stage, okay? I turn around, you show to the audience on which side you hold your cell phone. Because funny enough, everyone has a side where he holds a cell phone. Whether left or right-handed, doesn't matter. You have one side where you hold your cell phone, right? So I turn around, you show the audience which side is your cell phone. When you're done showing, tell me, I turn around and I prove to you that I can find which side you have your cell phone. And I had a success rate of like 99%. And because this side where I proved to them showed already a damage by using the cell phone, right? So we have with 4G and 5G a physical damage to the human body, to plants, to animals alike. And of course, Wi-Fi, GPS, smart meters, all these computers, laptops, screens, all this is based on Wi-Fi. And all these create what is called electromagnetic radiation. It's too far to go into there now, but basically to answer your question, you have a physical effect on the human body by 4G, 5G, and for the entire house, and the people who listen have a studio. Not that I want to sell the product. I designed them to protect people. That's my motivation. If you put this in your studio, 150 feet in radius, all Wi-Fi, electromagnetic radiation, is nullified and has no effect. So you have this physical effect. Now, we believe that 5G is new, right? But 5G has been around since the 60s. But the army is being used as a weapon.
Wow.
On my website is a book I recommend. I recommend books, I don't sell them, about 5G from a whistleblower from the Canadian Army who writes about it and who tells everything about it. He's a warfare specialist from the Canadian Army, was. The same as certain Barry Trower from the British Army. You find him on the internet all over the place on YouTube, talking about it. 5G was already in place in the 60s as a weapon for the army.
Wow.
Okay, that's a fact, right? So, and what happens is that 4G and especially 5G attacks the pineal gland. And the pineal gland is, as some people say, and as I say, the center of your emotional well-feeling, of emotional balance. Some people say in previous times, long before our time, the pineal gland was your brain. Besides, we know that the pineal gland produces melatonin and so on, and regulates hormones in your body. If the pineal gland is attacked, you throw the person off balance. And to my opinion, this is primarily because of 4G, 5G attacking, let's say, your brain. And for me, 4G, 5G are the main reason, one of the 3-4 main reasons why people develop cancer. Nowadays, every third person is dying of cancer. And the number gets worse. When I was a child, I knew anybody who had cancer or dementia. But now every third person dying of cancer, and the number is getting worse. It will going to be every 2.5, 2.4, it moves on and on. And for me, one of the 2-3 main reasons for that is 4G and 5G electromagnetic radiation. And the problem is you can't feel it. Most people can't feel it, can't see it, can't taste it. But we can prove it. And again, on my website are these tests where proofs that it harms the human body. And I'm not the only one. There's plenty of proof out there, but it's not distributed by CNN. And I compare it with the cigarette industry, where they knew that they were doing. They knew what they were doing. I give you a last example. A friend of mine used to work for Ericsson, when Ericsson was the big mobile company in the world. And he told me they did tests with pigs. They put a cell phone, strapped it to the head of a pig, of pigs, and let them run around for a while, whatever time. And then they stopped and slaughtered them and cut the skull open to see how far the electromagnetic radiation penetrated into the brain. They knew it all the time. But the business is so big that nobody touches it. Now, bottom line, for people who live their life like we all do, and we cannot have a life without Wi-Fi and cell phones and computers. I know that, myself included. What you have to do is you have to protect yourself that this technology doesn't harm you. Normally it should be done by the government to protect yourself, or by the industry, that they release products which are safe. But nobody ever, no company ever had to prove that a cell phone is harmless. No company, okay? And they don't touch that business. The business is so big, we have in America about 300 million people, 330 million people. We have about 400 million cell phones in America.
Wow.
That business, nobody wants to kill. And when they change from 4G to 5G, we have about 8 million cell phones on the planet. 8 billion cell phones on the planet. That was a guaranteed business for these companies within 3-4 years. The turnover from 4G to 5G, 8 billion units sold, guaranteed. Nobody touches that. So be ready, help yourself, preserve your health, and when you work in a recording studio, you have a truckload of electronics and of Wi-Fi and of electromagnetic radiation. Everywhere where there's an electrical plug, there's electromagnetic radiation.
So do you think, relating it back to music and creativity, that when you watch how they begin to plug in more and more technology, I wonder if we made a graph on creativity.
Sure.
How creativity began to change based on electromagnetic radiation.
It goes down.
Wow.
You cannot be creative when your mind is hurt by Wi-Fi. How creative can you be when you lay in a hospital bed with cancer? Creativity means to the utmost, I have no attention on making money. I have no attention on being healthy. Because then I have freedom. I have freedom to create. Tell a person who cannot pay his electricity bill at the end of the month, come on, sit down, let's relax, let's do a bit yoga, let's breathe. They say, guy, I got to pay my electricity bill, I got to work, I got to make some money, right? But in the moment you have attention on surviving lack of money and surviving lack of health, where is the room for creativity? Where it's supposed to come from? You must have a free mindset to dig into creativity. That's my opinion.
So the stress from the environmental toxins, which is the electromagnetic radiation, the stress of society, the stress of, even for some folks, it's the, being hooked on what I call the electronic crack, which is the social media network. Some folks can't wake up and they can't go to bed at night without checking to see what's happening in the world. So there's this mass distraction about what other people are doing, what other people are saying, about what the news is saying, instead of being in this zone, this idiom of pure creativity. You see, I think that, if we can drive home the message to people that once you get back into total creativity and you do what you really, truly, truly love, there's people in this world that will support you. Right now, I think there's enough people on the planet who would love anything that you do that's super creative, where you wouldn't have to go, you might have a part-time job, or you could even create products, right? You got this great piece of music, but you have something, hats, t-shirts, or, something that you can sell to people, and you use your music as a commercial, because in the beginning, that's what music was. It was a commercial. It said, hey, come. It was like my billboard. Come see me. I'm doing a concert. And people would come because they heard your song on the radio. You may not have made a lot of money from the song on the radio because artists didn't get paid from their song on the radio. Only the writers and the publishers did. So the artist was singing the song to attract people to the concert. And in the concert, you could have money. So I think that if we start thinking smaller, doing smaller, we used to do house parties. You know what I'm saying? We used to have a band, we'd be in a corner and people would pay $5 back in the 70s or actually the 60s to come to check you out. We could do that now. If we stop looking at trying to be quote unquote financially successful or commercially successful and sound like everybody else. I think that once we begin to do that, which is happening as we speak, because there's people listening right now that are going to hear that, wow, I don't have to be validated by the crowd. I can do what I really love and immerse myself in what I love because, excuse me, some of the greatest inventions in the world were created by people who had a love for something, who saw a need, like what you're doing, helping people deal with electromagnetic radiation and nullifying those effects of those frequencies is going to make people more creative. The way we actually met was interesting. A friend of mine, Michael Bernard Beckwith of the Agape Spiritual Center in Los Angeles, we're friends and, we work many different places together. And we went to go to dinner and he had this little thing around his neck. And I said, wow, that's a cool little piece of jewelry. He said, oh, this is not jewelry. I've been meaning to tell you for a long time about this device. I said, well, what is it? He said, it helps my voice. It helps you project. It helps with singers. It helps you sing better. It helps you speak better. And he says, it also does something with the glands, but I only know about the part about what it does for the voice. And then he said, you got to talk to this guy. You need to talk to him. He's going to be on the phone for a long time. And that's how we actually met. And so I want to finish by talking about this device, this thing that you have on your neck, how it works, how it came about, and how it can help people who are being creative.
Okay. Every singer, female, male, has a natural range, voice range, a register, and they all have a problem at certain songs with the high register and with the lowest register to hit those notes, which are each at the extreme top or bottom of their range, and they have to fight for their notes. They have to push hard. And the more they push, the more easy they're worn out, the more easy horse they become, right? And this product helps the vocal cords. It's based on quantum physics. Everything I'm doing is based on quantum physics. On quantum physics, I can improve, I think I can improve your vocal range by just wearing it, okay? And the way it goes, you'll take a song where you have a problem, sing a cappella 3-4 bars, take this unit, put it on, and sing these 3-4 bars again. And you should experience normally a big relief when singing and much easier, fluffy, to hit those high notes. And if you put one each more in your pocket, left and right, building a triangle, it's even much more. On my website, there are some artists, some musicians. One of them is a famous singer from Toto, and Bobby Kimball, and so on and so forth, who experienced that. So I can help to improve their vocal range, and they can sing much more relaxed and don't wear themselves out that much. And then when I developed it further, I found that we have 3 major glands: the thymus, the thyroid, and the pineal gland. And for most people, when I test people, these glands are all weak. They're not fully functioning. There's a lot of reasons to that. Maybe that goes too far now. But on my website, I explain it. I have webinars, talk shows where I explain it. So, and I found then that when I tweaked the programming in quantum physics, that I can deliver more energy to those glands. And they function better. And on my website, you see a doctor who tests the patient before and after, how it improves and how it changes.
Wow, and that's phenomenal, because a lot of us are dealing with issues, the throat, you know what I'm saying, being able to project, even being able to speak clearly. And also the pineal has a lot to do with creativity, intuition. And if their brain is not operating at its highest potential, then that could be stifling that creativity. Sure. So when I called you and I got one of these, I just said, let me just see how it works for creativity. And I found lately that I've been super creative just by wearing one. I have one here. And just by wearing that, I notice that I'm really clear. It's like I'm clear channel. I feel like I'm, getting younger and more creative instead of, some people, when they say they get older, they get less creative. Sure. That's because your body's in some kind of burnout or some kind of stress, either from the environment or from your thinking.
But you see, it should be the other way around.
Yes.
For me, the most stupid thing is to send people on a pension plan when they're 65 and go in retirement. You have developed over 65 years so much knowledge, so much expertise. You have burned bridges. You made mistakes. You paid for your mistakes, right? And now you're 65. You're in the full spin of wisdom, of knowledge, of experience, right? And now you go on retirement? No, it should be the other way around. I don't know whether you know Frank Lloyd Wright.
Yes.
Frank Lloyd Wright, the famous American architect who I love. And Frank Lloyd Wright did about 50% of his designs after the age of 50.
Wow.
Okay? Because now, when you get your body in a healthy situation, because we know over age, the body can wear out. It's normal, right?
Yes.
And if you put your body in a healthy situation, keep it as healthy as possible, plus your high potential of your knowledge, your wisdom, your thoughts, your experience, put this together, you must be the most creative person of all times you ever been.
Yes.
That's my philosophy.
Yes. That's beautiful. This has been great. This is wonderful, powerful, huge. And could you leave us with a message? What message would you have for people who are attempting to be creative, people who are in music or art, and also people who are dealing with stress in their environment? Give us a few words on, what we could do to help ourselves and things that we should focus on.
Okay. First of all, for the creativity, don't look for money. In the moment you look for the dollar sign, you buried yourself most likely already halfway. Don't look for the money and do what you really feel like doing, where you're really proud of yourself, regardless of other people. Don't do things to make your parents proud. I hear all the time, I make my parents proud. For me, that's a sick situation because you are under the thumbs of your parents. The parents should honor you, whatever you do, and you should not look for their applause, right? So do where you say, that is me. And if it's you, you never feel punished, you never feel obliged to work, forced to work. That's the most creative way, okay? The second thing is, for the health, the not compromising, not going the easy way. The easy way, fast food, fizzy drinks, all this crap is bringing you down. It's sexy, it's entertaining, it's fluffy, it's rock and roll, but it's bringing you down. We have a strong addiction, a craving for the wrong. Every time you're craving something, it's for the wrong. I have one webinar on my website, which is called, I think I called it, Every Coffee Drinker is a Drug Addict. And I prove in this webinar why I say this and why it is true. Why every coffee drinker is a drug addict. Everybody who needs at the morning an orange juice, otherwise he cannot start the day. I know that the orange juice is bad for him. You're not craving in the morning at breakfast time, I need a salad now. If I don't have a salad, my day is screwed, right? I need a salad now. Get me started with a salad.
Yes.
No, how much advertising you have for salad? 99% of all advertising commercials of products which go through your mouth is bad for you and brings you in addiction dependency. What do we advertise? Coffee, cigarettes, alcohol, energy drinks, fast food, chemical medication, sweets. All these products wear your body down and bring you in a dependency. And the companies know while they advertise this heavily. Once you started with that, they have a customer for life.
Yes.
Okay? So I can say, watch my show about coffee. I have a show which is called I Want to Die Healthy, where I say a lot of those things which we don't have time to do now.
Yes.
But I appreciate your invitation, opening your door and your heart.
Yes.
Let me step in. It's been a wonderful experience.
Thank you. Thank you. Could you tell us how our audience can find you? What's your website and how they can get involved with
Don't bug me. Don't find me. Leave me alone. Go to my website. It's easy to remember. improveyourlife.us. I couldn't have common, couldn't have this, Yes. Improveyourlife.us. You see my products, you see my product reviews, you see the certificates, you see my talk shows, you see my webinars, you see everything there. Improveyourlife.us.
I love that name, Improve Your Life. I think that we all should look to improve our lives and maybe move out of the loops. I see a lot of the popular artists today, they always align themselves with a liquor company or something like that. So that, people, I think that almost nullifies who people are. You know what I'm saying? If you have to drink, you have to get this fizzy thing, you have to look a certain way. And it keeps people from actually, elevating who they truly are as an individual. When we become an indivisible individual, when we're able to really be who we came to be, that's when we rise. And as we rise, we elevate. We're at a time right now of elevation. Right now, the earth is speeding up. The vibration of the earth is speeding up. We're in a brand new place in the galaxy. Everything is different. It's brand new. And if we keep looking at the past, and especially the disagreeable past, we become passive. We become passé. We become invalid, which is an invalid. So right now we're in a new place. We're creating something now for the first time that has never existed before. And right now what we're creating, because it is new, because it is now, it's not about the past. It's not about what happened. It's about what will happen. So each of us, if we come together and find ourselves and realize that there's love within us, everything is connected to its opposite. Everything is connected to its opposite. When you pluck a guitar string, it goes up and down, positive, minus, positive, minus. Those are vibrations. Those vibrations are like the vibrations of the heartbeat, the sound of the drums. All of this is the vibratory rate that we're living. And if we're on a planet that's being renewed and we're renewing ourselves, guess what? We will live forever because there is no death. There's only life. There's only now. After this particular vibration, we go to the next vibration. We go to the next song. We go to the verse. We go to the next band meeting, or we go to the next gig. But there is only life. And when we're ready to improve our lives, we begin to fly. So remember, be loving, be kind, be whole, be wise with Doctah B Sirius. Thank you very much. It's good to see you once again. Good to meet you actually for the first time after talking so many times on the phone. This has been great.
Thank you for having me.
Travel light and the best of success to you. Thank you very much.
For you.
See you again next time. Travel light.